This is episode 8 of the ANR Design Unholstered podcast with me, your host, Alex Costa. And again, this is week 2 of having Tyler Roberts of Licentia Arms. I don't know why I wanted to say Chia, like Chia Pet. But anyway, Licentia Arms. Tyler specializes in night vision. Listen to episode 7. We went down the deep rabbit hole about night vision and, the ins and the outs, the do's, the don'ts, the intro through the expert level stuff. And we are going to continue this week with accessories, helmets, helmet setups, battery packs. Tyler here has a really, really cool battery pack system that they produce under Licentia Arms that he wants to talk about and show you guys. So there's always an emphasis. Definitely check out the video on YouTube that we post because you will be missing some of the visual cues. But we've done a pretty good job, I think, so far explaining things in great detail. So let's get right into it. Helmets. Top 3 companies, top 2 let's just call it top 2. Top 2 companies, because we know who those are. Well, I know who those are. It's buy once, cry once in getting into this hobby for a lot of people. And we recommend, I think, Tyler, you run OpsCore. I run Team Wendy. There's pros and cons to both systems. There's proprietariness to both systems, but they both have their great usefulnesses. So anyway, take it away, bud. Thank you again for joining us for your second week.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's awesome. Always about shooting the shit about night vision and helping educate the community because there's a lot of lack thereof out there. But yeah, no, as you said, really the 2 main systems that we run and Alex runs is Team Wendy and OpsCore. Both are great. I would say really the 2 staples in the industry when it comes to helmet solutions. You've got bumps, which are more of a polymer helmet. You've got carbons, which are made of carbon fiber, and then you've got ballistic helmets. We kind of like both companies for different reasons. Team Wendy, I think, makes the best bump on the market. Reason being is that comes with a Wilcox shroud, and the OpsCore bumps just has kind of a molded polymer shroud. Kind of sucks. So if you're going bump, Team Wendy, it's where it's at. They're cheap. They're like $300, I think, and got a Wilcox shroud in their bow retention system, which personally is my favorite retention system on the market. Carbons, personally, I like Team Wendy's are great, but I like OpsCore. OpsCore's, they've got the arc rail, which is a little more streamlined as far as accessory options go and mountability. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see this is the arc rail and this is an OpsCore carbon. And then ballistics, the OpsCores, I think are definitely lighter, and I think a more of an advanced ballistic helmet system. And the SF in particular is pretty badass, super light, it's great ballistic helmet. And yeah, so Team Wendy, OpsCore, bumps, carbons, and ballistic. It's just whatever fits your requirements and your needs.
And you mentioned rails, just so if people are watching. This is a Team Wendy carbon bump with their Epic Air system, which I think they have a better pad system than OpsCore, but that's just me.
Yeah, they're good.
The bungee retention systems from Team Wendy is kind of OpsCore has nicer, but problem with the Team OpsCore, how easy is it to replace them, and do they come with replacement shot cord?
They don't come with it, but I mean, honestly, you can do it yourself. For those that are watching, I'll give a visual, but the OpsCore SF shroud, which is honestly one of the biggest advantages to OpsCore's bungee system, is the bungees are ran through the shroud and go straight back down to your night vision, as you can see here if you're watching. But think about, if you're not watching and you haven't seen it, think about where the shroud mounts. The bungee just runs beneath the shroud and comes directly out to your attachment points versus off of the rails, which it messes up your articulation because it interferes with it. So it
creates too much tension and it's snappy.
Yeah, it's a nice, the Ops Core shroud is a huge upgrade to older style shrouds and bungee systems.
Yeah. So on the Team Wendy, it's got a knot on the bungee, and you basically hook it in this little insert here, and then but there's a lot of bungee. So I think Team Wendy could have done a better job with their bungee system. Team Wendy rails are kind of cool. They have some setups. I do have a therm swivel right here. I'm not crazy about it. I think it's cool to have the articulation, but where it is mounted on a Team Wendy helmet is kind of poopy. I wish they had a Picatinny to Picatinny because then I would run up here. Problem is I'm running Ops Core amps on a adapter, on a Team Wendy adapter, and I didn't even put my wire into the wire hole, wire catch. Anyway, when I try to articulate these, and I do have a light here, that light likes to get in the way. So
yeah, the Theorem's a great product, but as far as the Team Wendy, this is what he's talking about. If you're watching on it, it's on an Ops Core, you've got the articulation, and it swivels, so it gives you a Picatinny interface to light your mount, but it definitely works better on the Ops Core. But
yeah, it goes more forward, whereas you're fixed. And that's another thing. If you want to run the Therm and you're not running Ops Cores that are out of the way, and you're trying to run the Team Wendy Peltor mount,
yeah, you can't do it.
Clips right into there. And yeah, I have a exfil over there that I could show. But anyway, Princeton Tech for small accessories. They make lots of cool lights and stuff like that. I saw one on yours. I have an IR and a red light on mine.
I've got white, light, red. But yeah, great for admin tasks. I mean, when we're out on the range training people or at a demo, I use the shit out of this little Princeton Tech.
It's great. Reading documents, whatever. All right. Opinions on V-Light. I have a visible V-Light in the back.
I mean, for what they are, it's simple tech, good to go.
Good to go. I got, these are 31s. I don't have a strobe. It has a built-in strobe to the battery pack here. On my DTN VSs, I'm running a Manta. Yeah, I'm running a Manta from SNS Precision. That product had a bunch of fucking issues over the years. Their caps used to be this really cheap polymer. It used to crack all the time. They now make them out of aluminum. It's great. And I'm rocking one of your battery pack holders. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that is our improved counterweight kit, and how that ships is it's designed to work around a PBS 31 battery pack and a 10-round PMAG. So luckily, those two items, the PBS 31 battery pack and a 10-round PMAG, are pretty much almost identical in size. And so if you're watching, you can see that I've got a 10-round PMAG on this one, and Alex has his 31 battery pack in there. But really, when we looked at the counterweight solutions that are on the market, we run our stuff. I mean, we only sell really what we run, because there's a lot of dumb products out on the market when it comes to night vision. And when you look at counterweight solutions that were out there prior to our improved counterweight kit, you really only had something like your TNVC Mohawk, which is pretty big. It's got the Mohawk piece that comes up the back of the helmet. Really, in our opinion, it's just unneeded. There's a lot more slim, better ways to secure your strobe. And I just didn't want all that bulk on our helmet. And so it really came out from just a position of need in the market, position of need for us, because we looked at it, we were like, okay, we've either got a Mohawk, or if we want to slim it down, we're going down to, say, like an Ops Core counterweight that is just dead lead weight. And unless you're running the Ambus or 31 battery pack variant of the Mohawk, they're using lead weight as well. And we look at it from the standpoint of, when you look at your helmet, and keep in mind, we design products both for the commercial market and the government market. And especially when people are using these professionally, you've got to have space, weight, and size, and retention is of a premium. So the improved counterweight kit, it uses the weight of a 10-round loaded PMAG. So if you're not running battery pack versus just dead lead weight. So you've got a functional solution that provides the perfect weight to balance out everything from a PBS 14 to a set of goggles. And you can customize that weight from running everything from lighter 55 grain 5.56 to 220 grain 300 blackout, which will give you a different weight if you need to customize it. It comes with the whole thing's manufactured out of laminate Cadura, and which is water resistant. It's better for maritime applications. And it comes with a bungee retention system with also anchor points that either anchor down to the bolt of your ops core rail or the bolt of the rear bolt or the rear bolt of your Team Windy. Or if you have the Team Windy variant that does not have that, you will have a little loop in your rail that you can just loop the retention system around.
What I did here, I didn't have a bolt.
Yeah, and so really the whole thing, I mean, it's a simple product, but it just works. I mean, it's everything you need, nothing you don't. It's got elastic loops around the edges of the product, so you can secure your cables, comms, your battery pack cable, and if you're running a battery pack, it gives you a solution to secure that so you're not losing it. One thing that with some of our customers that do a lot of jumping, battery packs are an issue, losing battery packs. And so that extra layer of included retention is important, because it's like a lot of the products had retention, but we're missing functionality. And so we really just took everything you need and wrapped it up in one product. And frankly, I think it's the best thing going.
I think so too. I love it. I like how easy it is to manage all the cable routes. Sometimes it can be a little tough getting a 90-degree L bend.
Yeah, it's
through them, but it takes a second, but you get through.
It's tight. It's tight on purpose, just because once you get that cable in, you really don't need to take it out on a frequent basis, and it really snugs it. I mean, you can tell me your opinion, but once you get it in, it snugs it up there real nice, and you don't have to mess with it.
It holds it. There's no chance that that's ever going to get bumped and pulled out. And I mean, those plugs you do have to pull on the collar to get it to release. But so yeah, helmet setups. I mean, people ask a lot, how should I have my helmet set up? At the end of the day, it's just like how you should have your holster set up, or how should I conceal my holster? It's based on you. It's personal preference. It's what are you trying to do? Are you trying to make a clone setup just so you look cool on the internet? Or are you actually trying to build something useful for yourself? Less is more. Some of the most hard use tubes I've ever seen, hard use housings I've ever seen, like you said in episode 7, is pig hunters. My uncle Todd Huey of Lone Star Boars. I mean, he beats the living fucking shit out of his stuff, gets it covered in mud, pulverizes it, and he's not running all these fancy lasers and not lasers, but fancy strobes and all these gadgets on his helmet. He's trying to run as low vis, lightweight as possible, because he's under tubes every night, and he's got a very strong neck. But he's wearing his helmet every single night. He's wearing tubes, so it's a counterweight, and I think he runs like a thermal over a non-dom eye, and then he runs thermal over his dominant eye and white phos 14 over his non-dom eye, which is starting to get a lot of popularity amongst hunters, because you don't have to handheld scan and articulate up, or like I run a Thermion XP50 pulsar. Even with my tubes articulated up, I can't get behind that glass. It still crashes just because how low it sits. So, it comes down to what you're fucking doing at the end of the day. Right. Are you hunting pigs every day every night in Texas, and you're doing walking stocks? Well, yeah, having a thermal and a 14 so you can see what your feet are doing and see what you're surrounding, but then still see thermal and kind of have a fusion effect, through your two eyes. That's cool. Versus, like what you have on your helmet. Like I have a V light, because sometimes it's good to have visible light there, because you might encounter someone behind you that doesn't have night vision and needs to follow you. So cameramen, that's super important. If you have someone following you that can't see you, it sucks when you got dudes with tubes behind you and you turn on a V light. But if you don't have anyone behind you, it's just you and you're trying to lead people. V-Light's super important for safety, recovery. If you're trying to find someone at night that's lost and they need to follow you in the dark, and you don't want to run a flashlight, or whatever it may be. Having a very low range visible light is important. So I have a V light for visible light in the back. I have my IR strobe on my pack. I have, I do run a white flashlight. I have a Scout that I usually have bolted up there. I don't know why it's not on that. And then I have the Princeton Tech IR, more admin light that articulates. So, I mean, I got a lot of light just in case, but that's what I've used personally. But, other people might say, fuck it, I don't need an admin light, or I don't need white light. Fuck it, I have a handheld, or I have a flashlight on my rifle, whatever. So it comes down to like, what are you doing? And like, how are you actually applying everything that's on your helmet? If you have an IR Scout or an IR mod light or whatever on an articulating, like the therm that we showed earlier, doing canopy lighting. If you're in a house, whether it's white or IR, like a low spectrum IR, canopy lighting is super important. You don't want to put hot spots. Yeah, so Tyler's articulating his up. Canopy lighting is when you face your light upward in a room so that it's hitting the ceiling or what's around you and illuminates everything in the room really nicely. There's not a lot of shadows, and it doesn't put a whole ton of stress on your tubes because you're not getting these hot spots on walls. So if you're in a white room and you fucking bang a IR light off a wall, you're going to you damage your tubes. Temporary blindness, not like physical blindness, but not being able to see anything going on for a few seconds. So canopy lighting is important. And it works in dense forests too. Canopying in the actual hitting the trees in the summertime when you have all those leaves, you get a lot of light reflecting back. People don't get, like, night vision sees so much light. Like, even if you have a half moon, you're throwing a massive shadow. If you're stalking deer at night and you're in a field that's cut in Texas, or you're stalking something that has really good night eyes, they're going to see a fucking 60-foot shadow from the moon. So you got to keep that in mind. Sorry, I'm rambling, but I lost it. Where'd it go? Trying to find it. Anyway.
Function of your helmet. Like you're saying, it honestly goes to all of what you need. I mean, and obviously we do this professionally, so we see a little bit more of a wider range of use than most people that own night vision, but it's everything that we put on our helmet has a use. And if you're just on the flat range and you just love night vision and you're just a commercial customer that thinks it's cool as hell and you want to put shit that you don't need on your helmet, fuck yeah, go for it. I mean, it's like kind of like your rifle. If there's stuff that you have on there that you don't necessarily need, but you're not relying on it from a professional capacity, and it's kind of, you're just out having fun, that's a different story than the guy that's jumping or breaching doors and different things like that. But I think kind of we both, even though we have our helmets set up differently, we both have a similar mindset on it as far as, working front to back. We mentioned this in last week's episode of the podcast of G24. Get yourself a good mount. That's the mount that's going to connect your night vision to your helmet. Cannot stress enough. That is what is saving your investment. That's what's holding it up. That's what's making it stable. It's rigid. It's keeping it in front of your eyes where you want it. And I mean, night vision is not here to save you money by any stretch of the imagination. So do yourself a favor, even if you've got to stretch it out and you're better off and you're just trying to get an entry system with a PVS 14 and don't sacrifice your tube or your mount just because you get it all at once. Save, get a G24. So that's kind of front, your helmet mount. Also have a quality shroud, understand what you're connecting your night vision and your mount to. Like, for instance, we talked about how if you're going to get a bump, we highly recommend a Team Windy because it comes with a Wilcox shroud versus OpsCore's molded polymer. I've seen those break. Hunter's one of my buddies, Jason, that he's down in Texas, professional hunter, and he's ripped G24s straight off of the polymer shroud on an OpsCore. So understand that your shroud and your mount, that's a very huge integral part of protecting your investment. It's then working back, strobes. I've got strobes on both of my primary helmets. I've got a OpsCore SF Ballistic and an OpsCore SF Carbon. Both have core survival strobes on them, but that is for a reason, because where we are in a variety of environments, everywhere from on law enforcement demo ranges and the shoot houses to hunting pigs. The strobe for us, it's a safety thing, like you said, with the V-Light, and also on my Carbon. So I've got mine retained with a attach patch from Core Survival on my SF, but on the Carbon, I don't. I want to be able to pull it off, because where I use the Carbon the most is just hunting pigs or out on a range, just teaching about we don't teach tactics, but we teach the technology side of it. So being able to take this off and mark a pig or whatever, because I mean, how many times have you killed a pig and you can't, if you don't mark it, you can't go find it again because the scat. So you go walk back to the truck to recover them. So I like to have one where I can pull it off, but it also, if you're watching this on video, when we put that on, that adds height to my helmet. So if I didn't necessarily have a need for it and I'm doing a lot of vehicle work, or if I'm not a pilot, but if a pilot is in the cockpit, he doesn't really need a strobe, but that just adds additional height to the helmet. It's all application driven. But really and then task lights, I run the Princeton Tech as well. And honestly, I took it off this one. So I don't, the Carbon, so I don't have it now, but I've got a Surefire M340V Pro that swivels and in and out, and then also on a Theorem mount like you've got, so I can have directional throw. Those are really nice from a helmet mounted light solution, because you've got both spectrums. You've got IR and you've got white light,
right?
And those are great when you go nods up and you're navigating, or if you've have to recover a pig, or if you're in a professional capacity and say you're on a SWAT level and you've gone hands on and you've now you've arrested somebody and you need to go white light with the team or whatever. Those are great. And then the Princeton Techs are great from a task basis. Honestly, I would recommend everybody have some sort of white IR light in some capacity on their helmet, and in something like a Surefire where you've got some decent brightness that you can use, but also the Princeton Tech for task basis. Because like, for instance, when I was at the real world sniper competition down in Texas a couple of weeks ago, I use this because I'm helping competitors get on clip-ons and be able to help them focus. So I don't want to blow out night vision, but I can just have a little small red light that helps me and doesn't kill my natural night vision. And then the counterweight, even if you don't go with our product, you need a counterweight. You need to balance out the weight of the helmet, because you don't want it tipping down on your forehead and fighting your helmet. But
yeah, and I recommend your product, dude. The reason being, for people, sorry to cut you off, but
there you go.
The OpsCore counterweight system, I mean, it's nice, streamlined, whatever, but it screws into the screws. It's smart. The Team Wendy counterweight system is kind of booty. It's 2 pieces of loose shock cord and an origami box that you fold up on.
Yeah, it's
lead rubber. It's cheap. Like, for what it is, it's cheap. I love Team Wendy helmets, but I've noticed the Bungie accessories that they have are kind of just like, they did it to do it. They didn't engineer it the way I would have thought to engineer it, which is fine. It's where you want to put all your effort. OpsCore does a really good job with accessories, so that is one of the nice things about the OpsCore products. Is their helmet support element accessories are more refined.
Definitely.
So that's nice about your battery pack holder and counterweight setup, is it's so much nicer and more refined than the Team Wendy setup. And it's like, okay, it's a no-brainer. Run this on your team. It looks good, so, and it runs good, and the Bungie, how you have it spaced to where it meets on that little loop on the back, it's fucking awesome. So
we appreciate that.
Good job. So we talked about helmet setups. Driving. If you own, yeah. So if you own night vision and you're like, man, I just spent $8,000 on this fucking cool setup, but I don't have a place to shoot at night. Or you only have a place to shoot ever so often at night. that's great. You want to obviously shoot as much as you can under night vision, but if you can't, I talked about in episode 7, me and Eddie over at Edgar Sherman, we used to go and fucking do night hikes. Do night hikes with my wife. She, we have a little side by side. We'll throw helmets on and we'll literally just drive at night, throw our side by side on the trails because it's fucking cool. It's like night overlanding, and it's not too crazy that if we get stuck, we're gonna be fucked and have to, whatever. But anyway, long story short, you can do tons of stuff with your night vision. Really, if you have kids, it's great to put them under nods. It can look at the stars. You can see constellations that you can't see with the naked eye. You can see planets. You can see really, really small meteorites or meteorites when it hits Earth. Meteors that are burning up in our atmosphere. So you see a lot of shooting stars. So there's like an educational aspect to it with kids, with family, with whomever. And it's cool. Like sometimes, some people live in hotter, more arid environments in the United States. Like if you have night vision, it might be easier to go hiking at night if you live in a desert or you live, whatever it may be, when it's cooler and you're like, well, I don't want to hike with flashlights all night. That's stupid. Hike with night vision. It's cool. It's fun. Sometimes you get to spook people accidentally. You'll be on a trail and you'll just stop dead in your tracks because someone's coming with white light. You block your tubes or whatever, and they just walk right by you. And we've done it. Like we've literally just stepped off trail and just watched people walk right by us. And, we probably should say something, but it's kind of fun just being like, well, that was cool. I've had people try to chase me down trails before because they were like, what the fuck was he wearing? I just saw a dude walk by in all dark, I was wearing like a tank top and shorts, but what the fuck was on his head? Was that night vision or some shit? Like, because I lived in the city.
I saw this tattooed man with goggles past me. Well, what is he doing?
Tattoos look cool under night vision. It's kind of like a camo. But, we've curbed what probably was a domestic violence incident. This lady had this man, probably her husband or spouse or whatever, and he was like over her and she was like crying profusely, and like 4 dudes with night vision just roll up down their alleyway. They were like in the alley in the city, and we roll up and we didn't see them because they weren't moving. They probably heard our footsteps and they were like, what the fuck? And and we didn't see them. I had a clip-on Ecody, which is a clip-on thermal overlay for people that have never seen them. They're really cool. It like outlines hot objects. So it's almost like cartoonized thermal over white phos. I don't run them too often. I mean, it's kind of niche and cool, but unless you're doing like actually looking to recover and save and rescue people, like having a thermal overlay is kind of pointless. But that's just me. I mean, thermal saves lives, but a thermal overlay, the purpose of it really isn't that cool for your everyday night vision stuff. But anyway, yeah, I'm pretty sure we stopped a domestic violence incident because we like rolled up on them and they were like, what the fuck? And it just completely took them out of whatever situation they were arguing over. And we're just like, hey, what's up? So, yeah, get out and use your tubes. Don't be afraid to use them. I saw something on Instagram a while back. You were driving with tubes on and you were talking about why it's okay to drive with tubes on with the headlights on. And talk about light pollution and like light interference and how light can actually create barriers between each other and stuff like that. It's something that a lot of people forget.
Yeah, definitely. So you're absolutely right though about night vision. To be honest, I mean, I'm one of the owners of Licentia Arms, obviously, and I use night vision more than most people will ever use night vision in their life. I can honestly say I use my night vision from more stuff that's not shooting than shooting. And I mean, we shoot obviously a fuck ton under goggles, but there's infinite amount. It's like owning a truck. You don't know how much you're going to use the truck until you own a truck. But yeah, light pollution. So really the biggest thing to remember with how this night vision technology works, it's all light based and it's all amplifying ambient light. So if you have zero light, your night vision is not going to work. So now there's obviously really nowhere on practical Earth that you have no light.
Because of UV light and natural UV radiation.
Yeah, but so without going down that rabbit hole,
yes,
how these systems work, really all good night vision that most people listening to this are going to use is auto gated night vision. And so what that means is auto gating is the ability for the power supply of the actual tube to provide and cut power at a crazy rapid rate. So you don't see that your tubes are turning off, but your tubes are actually turning on and turning off at such a rapid rate that it protects it from light damage. Now, it can only do that. It does that because there's a microprocessor in the tubes, so it's able to sense that and auto gate. But so what your auto gating does, it protects from environmental changes, and really that's important to understand for one, the capability of it, and two, not to damage your night vision. Because, for instance, like we talked about in the last episode, if you look at a street light, you could get a streak or a burn in your tubes because that street light in most scenarios is much brighter than the environment. So the tube can't compensate for that with the auto gating because there's a pinpoint concentrated light source that is brighter than the rest of the environment. So that pinpoint concentrated light source is what is able to damage your tube. Now, driving is the same concept with white light, normal headlights on. Driving is the same concept as using a white weapon light under goggles or under nods, because you're changing the environment in which the field of view that you can see, so the tubes can adjust. So these things, I mean, it's pretty damn impressive what they can take, and most people won't push their tubes to just a fear of burning them, they can actually take. But I mean, you could turn these things on and and we do not recommend this. So this is not disclaimer. Don't be calling us if you burn your tubes, because that's not covered under warranty. But they're very good at adapting to highlight. And so when you throw, say, like headlights, your tubes are auto gating and adjusting to the environmental conditions that you've changed with the throw of your headlights. So ambient light is not the enemy, concentrated light is. So same thing. And it's not, a lot of people say, well, what is fair game and what's not? And it's hard to answer that. And that's why I would recommend anybody that wants more on this subject. We've got a really good article under our resources tab on our website about light damage and how to avoid it. But in the very simple sense of it, it's if the tubes in the light of the environment is something that is not being able to cancel it out by other light in the environment, then you're going to have a problem. So perfect example, if me and Alex are out on a ranch in Texas and we're hunting pigs and you go driving around in a truck, and say I shoot a pig, I'm standing by it because say we didn't mark the pig or whatever, and Alex goes and gets the truck. And this has happened to me. This is a real example. Now with Alex, one of my other buddies, where I turned around as he hit the brake lights to park the truck. Well, the brake lights are very bright compared to the environmental lighting conditions out on a Texas ranch. So that brake light put a nice burn in the tubes that I was running that night, because it was a concentrated light source. Now turn that same brake light and flip it to, say, the highway, and not that legal or Licentia Arms condones driving on the highway for legal purposes, but if you're driving on the highway, you've got brake lights in front of you, there's a lot of cars driving on the highway and it's busy, there's going to be a lot of ambient light, street lights, other headlights, brake lights that are going to change the environmental conditions completely. So you've got a situation and you're going to probably be good. I mean, I drive all the time under goggles on the highways and all that.
With your lights on or lights off? For people
with my lights on.
With your lights on.
Normal conditions. The only thing that I do differently is I kill my dash lights, and so it gives it less bloom out on coming from the dash, but it's very doable. And those same brake lights that would cause an issue out in a different environment don't cause an issue in that environment, because lumens cancel out lumens and it diminishes the output and what is perceived from that light source. No different if you take 1,000 lumen flashlight and you blast it at nighttime versus you blast it at high noon outside, you're going to perceive very different effect.
Right. So contrasting environment. You're going from perfect darkness with a low lume out in the middle of a ranch, and you tag someone's someone tags their brake lights and you're looking at them, it's a huge change. Like it's the range, it's the light range. You're going from zero light to something that's normally not very bright to it being super bright versus having all that noise and all that light in your field of view, and tube isn't working so hard to fight the changes of light because everything's kind of more static. Yeah, that's something that people don't really realize. And after watching your video, I think you mentioned high beams. Like sometimes if you're like, oh, if you turn your lights off in your car and you're rolling dark, which is, we don't obviously condone illegal activities in a vehicle. We've all done it. I've gone down backcountry roads in New Hampshire with my lights completely off, with some taped on paper over my,
Oh, we laugh. It's like if I get pulled over and I'm either giving them a business card or I'm going to jail. there's no in between. But
I don't think you'd go to jail. They'd probably like, "Are you drunk?" And you're like, "No, I'm running tubes." And they're like,
"It'd be confiscation."
I don't know.
But to your point, that video that we posted, that was actually us going around a corner right as another car was coming right at us. And so I caught direct headlight from theirs, but our headlights that were on, standard white normal headlight configuration, lumens cancel out lumens. So the perception of what actually reached my tube was a lot less than if, say, like your point, we're rolling blacked out.
Yeah, and I've done this too. And some people are like, "Oh, well, that's fucking stupid." Excuse me, that's fucking stupid to drive around with headlights on. Like, oh, it's just dumb. But
honestly, driving is just fun as shit.
No, it's fun as shit, dude. It's so fun as shit, especially when you roll up to.
It is legitimately safer because I'm sorry, there are deer and things that are on the side of the road that potentially could run out that I've seen under goggles that I would never have seen if I just had my headlights on.
Exactly.
You can't. If you tell me it's more dangerous to drive under goggles than a good set of true goggles, not some PBS 7 nonsense.
Yeah, you could argue field of view, but again, you have your headlights still on, so you're still having your night eyes.
When you're driving, you should be constantly scanning anyways, right, so it's
exactly. So yeah, guys and gals listening, you drive with your, if someone's got high beams on, obviously flip them up or do something, get them out of the way. But in general, yeah, you can drive with your tubes on. It's cool. And people that are like, "Oh, well, what about IR floods?" Like, I want IR floods for my truck. That's almost a 2014 Toyota Tacoma, like incandescent bulb headlight is less powerful than IR floods. So, you're not going to be hurting your tubes or anything.
Yeah, no.
People also forget that IR light is light and it can be extremely intense. Speaking of intense lights, so we talked about, what you should go out and just run your tubes, just run them. Do, capitalize on your investment. It's cool. It's
don't be scared of them.
Don't what?
Don't be scared to use them.
Don't be scared to use them. They're not a fucking Instagram fucking photo piece. Like, actually use your shit. Have fun with it. Go on hikes. Introduce your friends to it. I'm kind of weird. I don't like people wearing my helmets. So, I hope that everyone just buys a helmet. And if they want to run night vision first time, because you get a lot of people like, "Oh, I bought a helmet." Like, why'd you buy a bump helmet? What are you going to do with it? That bump helmet's not going to do anything for you. What are you going to ride a bike with it? You're going to go kayaking?
Wearing your helmet?
Yeah, get night vision. So yeah, let's go back to so we talked about lights. So to talk about IR blocking. People don't realize that, like, when you shoot suppressors, they get hot. Infrared light. I want to talk about infrared light for just a second. Let's call it like 2 minutes. But infrared light, guys, I posted a video, our Noveski N4 SBR under night vision video on YouTube. Infrared light, you get a can hot, it's storing infrared light. Even if the can's glowing, like that can was so visible, like glowing red from my actual eyes without tubes on, that it was like really fucking bright. Well, guess what? IR light is a real thing. It's everywhere. People have it. Certain surfaces reflect light. So you'll hear a lot of people, and you look at uniforms and military stuff, and you'll see stuff that's IR blocking. A lot of requirements for that. There's a lot of requirements in the holster community for that. There's a reason why nylon Cadora IR blocking, multicam exists, the adhesive stuff, because you can put it on a holster and you can prevent reflectivity of IR light. So IR blocking is important. Do you have anything to talk about IR blocking? Have you really done it at all?
I mean, other than what you said, is people need to realize that IR is, when you go under goggles, you can see more of the spectrum of light than you can with the naked eye. And things like suppressors, that's the whole reason why you can see the stars. It's not like you're under magnification with goggles. Stars just put out in space, puts out a lot of IR light. So that's why you're able to see more. But no, I think you hit it.
Yeah. So, and another funny one is, if anyone knows constellations, there's a constellation called the Seven Sisters. It's kind of like a Capricorn shape. And if someone has really, really good night eyes, like no night vision, natural night eyes, you're supposed to be able to count 7 of the 7 sisters. My eyes aren't that good. I can count like 5 or 6 depending on what the lume is out. But yeah, when you put your night vision on, there's like fucking 32 of them. It's like this cluster of light. So yeah, it's super cool. So yeah, IR blocking. So if you guys have ever heard anything about IR blocking uniforms or anything like that, it's just regarding uniforms and textures and textiles and materials and stuff that really just absorbs light versus reflecting light.
Which, and honestly, probably the thing that most people don't realize that haven't tested this. In theory, people think, oh, black multicam, I'm going out at night. Black multicam is going to be the way to go. Black multicam lights your ass up so quick because it reflects it. It reflects more because a lot of colors palette determine reflection rates and things like that. True, just good multicam does very, very well at both under goggles and not under goggles. But it changes, and it may not be what you think.
Exactly. And I mean, it comes down to, like, look at deep sea fish. Like, I'm talking no light deep sea fish. They're all fucking red. The red is under complete darkness, naked eye. Red and oranges are the best fucking colors to run in perfect darkness. I don't know if that works with night vision, but I wouldn't think it was too far off the mark, right? Because there's a lot of sea creatures. There's no light down there, so it's funny their bodies have like biologically evolved over the years just to be red, just in case there is something that can see. So yeah, red. Also, what else was I going to talk about? Pigs, dude, pigs. We've seen a lot of tan pigs, long-haired tan pigs, black spots. They are harder to see under night vision. They're almost fucking invisible. Black pigs are easy to see under night vision comparatively to these other pigs. And then I've seen these like really hairy fucking tan pigs covered in mud. And it reminds me of that scene in Predator where Arnold Schwarzenegger covers himself in wet mud. It doesn't really work like that if it's wet, because it's going to conduct heat through wetness better than dry mud. So if like Arnold Schwarzenegger, sat there and let everything cake on dry, it's going to have a different, because like wetness is a conductor. But it's really funny because we were watching some pigs the other day and they had cakes of mud on them. And those cakes of mud were almost ambient temperature because their hair actually created a standoff, like a heat sink. It was like heat sink on like a processor on a computer. It was cooling down, and that mud was cooler, closer to ambient. It made the pigs harder to see. So it's pretty interesting once you start getting under night vision and seeing different things that you'd be like, oh, you'd be able to see that shit, and you're like, holy fuck, that's almost invisible. So that's where
it's like when you look at the Ops Corps helmets, you'll see that there's some texture to it.
Yeah.
That texture helps break up that IR reflection.
Exactly. So,
But moral of the story is you can only learn by seeing this, and tube time is important. So you're better off getting in the game, getting yourself a PBS 14 and starting to learn versus, putting it off 2 years just to get a set of goggles.
Right. So last topic. This is the last topic. I can hear my puppy screaming her mind out, and I don't know where my wife is. My wife should be home. Anyway, last topic, lasers. Now you have your night vision. Now you have your helmet. Now you want to shoot at night. You can shoot passively through, they say passively, through your optic, whatever your optic is. Hopefully it has a night vision setting so that the dot is super crispy, tiny, not that bright. Shooting under rifles and red dot pistols is so cool under night vision. It's like a video game because obviously you can't see your hands. Your hands are blurry. You don't even see your gun. You don't see your iron sights. You just see this dot floating in your vision. It's almost like the floating crosshair on a fucking video game. It's rad. It's super rad. But you can shoot passive. Passive's cool, but passive is hard, especially if you're using a red dot out to 200 yards. Like it's cool shooting white steel on a dark backdrop at night, but it's very fucking hard to see things. So lasers and illuminators are actually really important. And you'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh, we don't use laser and illuminators that much anymore." And you'll hear a lot of mill dudes say, like from the soft community, a lot of guys are shooting passive underpowered optics. Or they have like a thermal element to something because the fucking, ISIS dudes and Taliban, they're buying those like Sony Handycam 4K cameras with the night vision option. Those cheap $600 cameras can see lasers, So there's, you don't want to light ND. You can light ND under lasers. So you hear a lot of dudes say like they don't run lasers a whole lot. But then I've heard, the completely polar opposite from other soft dudes. They're like, all we do is run lasers. We try not to shoot passive. So we really, really have to. So I know a lot about laser theory. I've talked about it before, so we won't get into laser theory and zeroing lasers because that's I talked about that in my Noveski N4 video. But let's talk about lasers real quick. Entry level and what breaks the bank versus best bang for your buck lasers, and then let's break some misconceptions about class 5 lasers. So wait, real quick, class 5 lasers, everyone thinks getting a fucking PEC 15 from a buddy from the military that jacked it somewhere is super cool and high speed, but personally, like, class 5 lasers to me are fucking useless. They're too bright, too much going on, too expensive. What was that?
It's class 3.
Class 3. So it's class 5. Class 5 is like super, super, super shit, right?
That's like cut and shit.
Class 5. Are you sure? Because I've seen some L3 stuff that's high.
It's
up there.
freebie. That if we're talking standard like PECs and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So not standard PECs, but there are. Let me backpedal. Full power versus civilian. I prefer civilian lasers for our application: pig hunting, shooting with your friends, shooting in the backyard, whatever. Versus full power. Because full power, we don't have aircraft that we need to designate anywhere or light up, right? We don't need someone at 30,000 feet being like, "Oh, there it is," So give me your spiel on lasers.
Yeah, so just kind of the down and dirty on lasers. I'd say there's a lot of misconceptions on, like you said, quote unquote, full power lasers. So the first thing is why are they restricted? The FDA restricts laser output because of eye safety, and that's what actually restricts them. So the manufacturers have to abide by that, and us as direct dealers that don't want to lose our relationship with L3 and Wilcox and all that have to abide by it. But so down and dirty on lasers, the difference between passive and using a laser, like we've said so many times in this episode and last episode, comes down to application. But if you are going to use a laser, which is a very good essential tool, you've got two main functions. You've got your laser. And so for those of you watching, I've got an indol in my hand, but you've got your laser and then you've got your illuminator as well. I'll go back. You've got your IR laser and your vis laser and then your illuminator. And so any laser product that we would recommend, and there's some out there that eliminate one of those three essential functions, like a deep all eye squared, you can get just a vis laser and an IR laser and lose your illuminator, or get an IR laser and IR illuminator but lose your vis. We think to be effective at night and to really capitalize on your equipment, you need a vis laser that's slaved with your IR laser, which means that if you zero your visible laser, then your IR laser is zeroed. and you also need an IR illuminator. Your IR illuminator, when you think about laser devices such as your D-balls, your PECs, your INGALs, your RAIDs, the MAL, all that, your illuminator is honestly arguably more important than your laser. Absolutely. And that's what people don't understand. And when you talk about, we're not signaling aircraft, you look at even a PEC, standard PEC 15, and that's a 45 milliwatt laser. And it's nothing crazy. It's not a UHP, but when you use that laser on high, and you're trying to aim with it, you're blooming out your whole target. That is, you could damage your tubes. That is not there to aim. That is there to signal, to communicate. And the good thing about the new gen lasers is, and like, for instance, if you're using an INGAL or a PEC 15, the L3 products, you have to use your diffuser cap if you use it on dual high to be able to tone back that full power laser, but still have the ability to use the output on your full power illuminator to where that laser is low enough where you can still aim and it doesn't blow out your target. So if you're looking at full power lasers, and that's something that you think you want to dive into, whether you're getting it on the secondary, whether you're in law enforcement, whatever, understand like what you're buying. And really, when you get into full power stuff, you're buying it for the illuminator, not the laser, for most applications. But kind of just starting at the very start of what we would consider an acceptable spectrum on the civilian side, you've got a D-ball A3. You're looking in $1,400, really, like $1,400, and you've got a visible laser that you can use during the day and for training that's slaved with your IR laser and an illuminator.
We always not slaved to your laser. It's on the opposite side of the housing. And
yeah. So like on this INGAL, if you're watching, you've got this side, which is one side, which is both of your lasers, and the other side, which is your illuminator. So once you zero your lasers, pretty much, unless you're using a MAL, which is a fixed illuminator, you're going to zero your illuminator. So your dot of your laser is in the center of your throw of your illuminator. But so the D-ball A3, the reason we recommend that over an OPPLC, which is a civilian PEC 15, is the illuminator is the divergence, which means the throw, the width of the throw is adjustable, and it's a little more powerful. So D-ball A3 at $1,400, that's what we would consider your entry-level acceptable laser product. Then, honestly, and we would say don't buy an OPPLC because they're trash. The illuminator sucks. It's not a great product because the illuminator is so key, and it doesn't have enough juice. And there is
a couple. The laser's decent, but yeah, like you said, the illuminator's kind of trash. It's okay out to 100 yards, but that's about it.
I'd say that's pushing it depending on lighting conditions, because like we talked about, if you have any type of ambient light, that's going to overpower that illuminator. But then if you're like, I want to get something better than a D-ball A3, and I really want to invest in this, but I don't want to go with a full power unit because A, I'm a civilian, and B, I want to have a warranty. A MAL is a great option. MALs it's a VCSEL technology. So you go from a traditional edge emitting laser to a center emitting diode, which gives you a cleaner laser. The MAL, they kind of beat the FDA restrictions because they preset their divergence for their illuminators. So when the divergence was wider, they were able to kick up the juice, because how the FDA measures lasers is at certain strengths, at certain divergences and all that. So they've got to keep that equilibrium within the guidelines. But the MAL, you're coming in right at sub $3,000. Best option performance wise if you want to stick with civilian. And there's a lot of LE guys that are running MAL C1 pluses. Then kind of moving into the full power side, if it's not illegal to own a full power laser, it is just illegal for a manufacturer to manufacture it and sell it to a civilian because of those FDA restrictions. And us as dealers have to abide by that because of our dealer contractual agreements. But if you find a full power laser on the secondary market, you're looking at like a PEC 15, a RAID, an INGAL, a UHP, all of that. It's just important to understand what you're biting off. The first thing is you're not going to have a warranty, because you're not going to be able to send that back, and they won't replace it because you're really not supposed to have it. So if it breaks, you're kind of shit out of luck.
And we're talking high end, what, $7,000?
As far you're looking at a PEC 15, you're looking right now. I think they're going on the secondary market for like $2,500 to all that. Ingalls and UHPs are 5,000 to 7,000 kind of thing.
Right. I saw a Raid X secondhand tan green laser for like 55, and I was like,
yeah. But so looking at the restricted models, you've got your PEC 15 is kind of like your Glock 19 of lasers. If those were not restricted, we'd recommend everybody start with PEC 15. You've got adjustable divergence on the illuminator. You've got a good output. The high power laser is too much for aiming, but you can use your diffuser cap to tone it back. Great laser. Like I said, if you're ranging from $2,000 to $2,500, depending on what channel you get it through. Then you go to your LA5s and your UHPs. Those really are designed for signaling, other applications, not just aiming. So unless you are, a private citizen that is planning aerial interdiction, you don't really need those at all. Now going to the Raid and the Ingall. The Raid and the Ingall are what's called next gen lasers. So you go from your old gen stuff like your PEC 15s, your D balls, and with your edge emitting diode to VCSEL technology, which is your center emitting diode. So what that it means to the end user is if you throw like a PEC 15 and you see these little amoebas inside, that's because the throw of the laser technology is not clean. VCSEL technology with the Ingall and the Raid, it cleaned it up tremendously. The aiming laser's cleaner. It throws better. The illuminator is significantly better. It's clean. You don't have the amoebas. The reason if you're looking at the Raid versus the Ingall, both are great options. Both have pros and cons, but our favorite thing about the Raid and what addresses what we've talked about so far, as far as like most of the time you want the full power output of the illuminator, but you don't need some crazy hot laser for aiming. So the Raid actually lets you get function control so you can independently turn down the aiming laser and independently of the illuminator. So that's why we primarily run a lot of Raids, is because I can go out and I can throw a higher power illuminator. I can break lighting barriers and photonic barriers.
Photonic barriers. Sorry. That was the word I was looking for earlier.
Yeah. So that just means basically you've got a light barrier that you have to push through with stronger light, whether that be IR, white light, it's all a photonic barrier. You've got to have more juice to beat it. So on super bright nights and super dark nights, a full power illuminator is really nice. And the Raid, you can tone back that laser. The Ingall, you can't. You still have what's called a diffuser cap, just these little caps that go over your output area.
And it's not slaved, right? The Raid has a slaved illuminator, or am I wrong?
The Raid, you got to zero your illuminator.
Oh, you do? Okay. So Maul is the only slaved illuminator right now.
Well, the Maul is really not slaved.
Not slaved.
Actually, I lied. There's no adjustment on the Raid. But it's just a fixed throw. So if you're watching, here's a Raid X. So you adjust your laser, so it could move it in your window of your illuminator. Right. But it's not the biggest deal in the world because you can adjust your divergence to be so wide that it's not a big deal.
I mean, the Maul is slaved. There's no windage and elevation adjustment for the illuminator. It's
not moving, to my knowledge, it's not moving the actual illuminator though. It's just moving the laser. And
no, it's 100% slaved. I can guarantee it's slaved. Yeah, one of the instructors up at Ridgeline helped develop the fucking Maul. His name's Rudy. And when we took his class, he's all about Mauls. And he talked about it being slaved, and we were putting that laser. I was putting my Maul out to like 300 yards, and it's slaved as fuck, dude.
Nice.
Because like when you have the little throw, it's got like a little thumb throw on it, and I didn't mean to like sound all worked up, like, oh my god, it's slaved.
Shut your mouth.
Yeah. When it's all the way backpedaled, you'll have this like fucking flood of light around you, in front of your rifle, in front of your weapon system. And then obviously your laser's on your target at 50 yards, but you have this like floodlight. And it's because the illuminator is slaved, and you can change your focal plane with just this quick throw on the device, it has a safety stop that you do have to like kind of manipulate with your second finger and push it down and then push it forward. And that's just a lockout. But yeah, when it's up close and you're just running laser, that is a fucking 100% slave, because you have this like big old fucking floodlight and you're like, what the fuck is that? That's the illuminator, and it's basically changing the focus. You know, we're talking about conal photonic focus. It opens it really, really wide, and you have all that light escaping from the illuminator from the bezel around the laser. And then
it goes from a concentrated throw to a true flood.
Yeah. So it's like, it's actually like,
and that's what's nice about the raid.
It's like a really full-blown true flood up close, throwing light about 40 meters, IR light. And then as you push it forward, it's closing that focus and tightening that cone towards where your laser is designated. And it's centered every fucking time. So I believe it's 100% slaved, which is really cool about the maul. But again, the maul is really heavy. It has to hang off one side of your weapon system.
Yeah, it doesn't have a lot of ambi controls. And that's why, honestly, it's way more. We use raids way more. I mean, we've ran mauls, but that's why we primarily run raids, just because we can have access to them. But
and you burn yourself with mauls.
The nice thing about raids versus Ingals, and the good thing about a maul, is when you're looking at like what laser product's nice for you, is the maul and the raid both have true floods that are thrown from the laser. Right. Versus the Ingal, you have to use a diffuser cap to get to change the throw from a concentrated throw to a flood, which is a big downfall of the Ingal, because when you look at it, if you lose that diffuser cap, or if the little window that's inside of it breaks off, which has happened to me, then you lose the ability to have your flood. So a true mechanical flood with it, and a raid or a maul, is a huge benefit, especially if you're in structures and you're relying on that. So that's a big positive, because diffuser caps fail. They're just little rubber caps.
Yeah, huge downfall to L3 stuff. And Engals are highly regulated, super regulated stuff. L3 is really stingy on who gets what. Raids a little less stringent. Wilcox is a little less give a fuck, but again, if you have warranty work, you're not going to get anything. Full power pecs, again, you buy a full power pec from a buddy, that thing breaks, you're shit out of luck. Yeah. Mauls, I mean, for a civilian laser that's acquirable, I personally think the mauls, in my opinion, I think the maul is better than 100% better than a fucking D-ball.
Oh yeah. I mean, the only way you would go with the D-ball is if you don't want to spend, $3,000 and you want to keep it at $1,400 kind of thing.
Right. So if you're a civilian, I mean, obviously civilians have access to all of these, but it's what risk you're willing to take. I think we're in agreement. Maul is
as nitty gritty as it gets. If you're a civilian and budget is super important, you're not going to be able to spend over $2,000. D-ball A3, great entry level product. If you are a civilian and kind of you're looking at that $2,500 plus price point, a PEC 15, full power PEC 15 off the secondary, even though you don't have a warranty, I mean, unless it looks like it's been through Benghazi, it's probably going to last you a really long time.
Yep.
They're great. PEC 15s are great. They're around $2,500. Mauls are great. You've got a warranty.
$2,300.
Yeah. Mauls, I think they're like 28, 29. They've gotten up there.
Oh, I paid 25 for mine.
Well, you're cool. You're spent. But and then if you want to if money's no option and you're like, you know what, I want the best performing laser I can possibly get, and you can swoop a raid on the secondary market, that's what I'd go for. But if you're a civilian, that's kind of the down and dirty of how I'd gauge it, and you pick from there.
Yeah, and Engals, it's a cool laser device system, but L3 missed the mark. All those little all those little filters, and they give you a bag of them, and then you have to figure out which one you want to use, and then it's kind of mission oriented. Like, let's call it air quotes, mission oriented. So you got to figure out what filter you want to use that's best for the situation you're putting yourself in. Just kind of poopy.
Which the biggest thing about the Ingal, they've all got pros and cons, but the biggest positive about the Ingal is your selector knob has really good tactile clicks, and you've got to put some not full. good force to change it. It has to be deliberate versus the raid. It is a lot easier to move, and you could inadvertently move it in like a bag or things like that.
Yep.
So there are pros and cons of both, but overall restrictions out the window, all that personally, I would say a raid, but.
Perfect. And then I know this is going to come up in a question somewhere. The LS321G from Hollow Sun, I have personal experience with it. The laser's fine. The illuminator is absolute dog shit.
I've honestly never used it.
I have. They gave me one years ago. The laser is fine. I bang steel with it at night. It's fine. I've run it. The illuminator is absolute trash. I've seen D-Ball A3 full power, like the D-Balls, their illuminator, the bezel is really long, and if you run it really forward without a can, you're gonna get fucking schmutz all over your illuminator. Keep your shit clean. Clean these.
Which, on that note, if you're gonna get a night vision, get a fucking suppressor. Don't be that douchebag that shows up with a suppressor.
Always have a suppressor. It's great. Last thing, so the Hollow LS321G, I think, is their highest N1. It's like $900. It's okay. I mean, if you can't afford these super expensive lasers and you're just banging steel in your backyard, that's probably an option that might work for you. You can also find the Zenitco. Have you messed with any of the Zenit stuff? The
no.
Russian full power lasers?
Yeah. Honestly, if you think that you have a warranty with a Russian imported laser that may or may not get held up in customs, you're kidding yourself. So at that point, just get a PEC 15 because you don't have a warranty anyways.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have experience with the laser IR visible only. I think it's the Purse 4. I have a Purse 4 on an AK. I wanted a full Russian build. It's cool. It holds 0. I do like, the Russians did something really, really, really right with their laser systems is their fucking switches, dude. Their remote switches have an actual aluminum little lockout cap on them. It's really, really polished. They have an intensity knob on your fucking switch. So you can actually,
lockout cap?
Like the cap that goes into the back, like your switch, switch, it locks in. It's a little locking cap in it. And so you can't accidentally pull it out, and it locks pretty good. And then the switch itself, you can do the momentary and constant with the rubber pad. It's an aluminum Picatinny mount, which is tight, and it's super compact. It's like half as tall as like 2/3 as tall as a Surefire switch. And then it has a fucking knob built in. So it's like paper thin aluminum housed rubber pad, waterproof. And then it has a knob. And you can actually, as you go, you can just change the intensity by just rolling that knob when the laser is on constant on. So you can go from like civvy spec to full power. And it's pretty fucking bright, dude. So I think
the flexibility is always great because lighting conditions change. That's why
it's so fast, dude. Like literally you just roll as the lights, as the laser's on, you just roll your finger across the intensity knob and you can dial it down. Only con to the intensity knob is if you do it too quickly, you'll skip. The gear or whatever inside the switch will skip, so you have to do it slow. If you just zip it real fast, it'll bloom full power. If you're at low power, it'll like spike full power. Those are cheap. I mean, you can get the laser and illuminator ones for like $400. They have or laser is IR for like $400, and then the illuminator full power ones are I think $1,100. I've heard pros and cons. I've heard people say they don't hold 0. I've heard people say they fall apart. I've got thousands of rounds on mine. Mine's fine. So it is what it is. But I mean, granted, in all this high end shit, we find stuff that fails, and it's supposed to be top end. So,
there's no perfect product when it comes to night vision.
No, there's not, and it comes down to capabilities.
Counterweight system.
Yeah, right. Counterweight system, and thermals will be a talk for another time. I don't have the energy for thermals. That is
whole other rabbit hole.
Constantly evolving. Every year, new stuff comes out. I personally like if people want thermal, you want a thermal glass to shoot pigs. My personal suggestion, out of budget, with capabilities, ease of use, ease of zeroing, is the Pulsar XP50. 30 mil tube. It looks like a normal spotting, a normal sniper glass.
It looks like a normal day scope.
It looks like a normal day scope. they're like, I forget what the price is. I get dealer on it, so it was like $4,200 or something like that.
Yeah.
They self-record. They record audio. They things to consider when you zero a thermal. Whatever power you zero it at is the zero of the thermal. If you change power, you will miss your shots. I learned this in Texas recently. I tried to take a shot at something that was like 200 yards out, and I was at 2 power, 0, and I went up to like 4 power, and I missed my shots. I'm like, what the fuck? So it's
of course, every time you miss, it's never on you. It's just equipment.
Absolutely not. Never miss. So, and you can see from the videos on those 2 power shots, dude, never miss. 4 power though, no bueno. But yeah, so thermals are cool. Something that people don't know about thermals, well, at least the thermals I've experienced, zeroing a thermal is like the most satisfying experience because it only takes like 2 or 3 shots to zero a thermal. If you ever want to know how to zero a thermal, the XP50 has a freeze frame function. You're looking downrange. I put one of those hot feet that you put in your boots in the wintertime when it's cold to keep your toesies warm. Slap that on a paper target. Shoot a paper target. Hopefully it's not too cold. Try not to zero when it's too cold or too hot. Like a good average ambient. You'll actually see holes in the paper, and you'll see the ring from the bullet passing through the paper, keeping it hot. And you'll see that impact, and then you will literally just move your crosshair from your bullseye. Hopefully it's benched or something, bagged, bipoded, tripoded. But you keep it fixed at where you held your bullseye, and then you just hit freeze frame, and then you go back to the zero function, and you can move your X and your Y to your 0, hit unfreeze, take your next shot. It should fucking cloverleaf that hole. And it works really fucking well, and it's a great ammo saver, and thermals are fucking tight. It's worth the money if you're going to be hunting a lot.
One tip too. You talk about throwing like a hand warmer up there or like a foot warmer, sticking it on there.
Yeah.
If you do it on a piece of cardboard and you cut out a little hole and you put it on the back end, it'll help block some of that. And so you can have a more precise heat signature to zero with.
Perfect. There you go. So, man, we killed a lot. I mean, you and I could talk for hours about this shit. I mean, we could go into laser theory, how to zero your lasers, why certain offsets, constant offset versus converging offset versus infinite offset.
Zeroing a laser could be an entire podcast.
It could be an entire podcast because it will air quote again mission specific. It's what are you trying to do with your system? So a lot of people hit me up on Instagram and be like, I want to do this, and what barrel length would you run for this type AR? And I want to do a recce build and blah 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 blah. It's like, what barrel twist? What caliber? What grain of bullet? What bullet are you running? Is it a fucking OTM or is this ball? Like, are you hunting with it? Or are you just trying to make something cool? Like, what the fuck are you doing? And at the end of the day, we build these guns because they are defensive tools to protect ourselves and our loved ones, or you're hunting. Those are the two things. And we'll leave hunting as a very general statement.
Keeping the government in check.
We don't say that shit out loud. Anyway, long story short, I hope everyone enjoyed this. I think these 2 episodes, episode 7 and episode 8, are going to be extremely helpful to people that want to dip their toes into night vision. I think a lot of the stuff that we talked about will be very helpful for people that believe in their hearts and souls that they are very confident and educated under night vision. I'm one of those people. I was like, oh damn, I know a lot about night vision. And then there's a lot of topics that we talked about this week and last week that I was like, oh man, that makes perfect sense now. I never thought of it in that perspective. So I think it's super, super helpful, super important. And Tyler, again, thank you again for spending so much time with me doing this silly thing. Thanks
for having me. It's been awesome. And anybody that has other questions about night vision or looking to get into it, feel free, if you don't already, follow us on Instagram. It's Licentia, LICENTIA_arms. We've got a lot of educational content. Our website is just licentiaarmsco.com. We've got a lot of resources, articles, things like that to just help you get ready and be educated before you buy. Know what you're buying. Don't spend 10 grand and be like, wait, I didn't know this. Ask questions. We're here to help. And yeah, I appreciate you having us.
Awesome. And this podcast, it's on all major outlets. So I'll send you the link list afterwards so you can use it as a tool, an informational tool for your subscribers, viewers, fans, and
this is awesome.
People getting involved. So thanks again, dude. And that's a wrap on episode 8 of the ANR Design Unholstered podcast with your host, Alex Costa. And our guest today again was Tyler Roberts of Licentia Arms. And definitely, if you're going to spend money, spend it with them. There's plenty of other night vision folks. If Tyler doesn't have something or is unable to obtain, you guys know how to get a hold of me. I have other suggestions, but Tyler has been probably the most quintessential and pivotal person in my life around night vision over the last 4 years and has answered all of my questions. So definitely ask them for help before buying. Thank you again for everyone for listening. And Tyler, again, thanks again for all your time.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.